Hello everybody and welcome back to the AntPod. The time has now started and today it's now episode 9 of the AntPod and wow, it's been a while since the last episode. Today we're gonna chat about what has been going on and what will happen in the future. And if you are looking to joining a podcast, this may be your chance because I'm looking for a co-host, but more about that later in the little podcast. For those who are new here, welcome to the AntPod. This is a podcast focused all around ant keeping, and this is now episode number 9, meaning we have 8 other fantastic episodes featuring people like Ants Australia, aka Jordan Dean. We've also had Ant Scandinavia on the pod, together with Aesthetic Ants, Wakushi, and many more. So it's not at all a new podcast, although it has been quite dead for a little while because I simply got too busy. Now I want to say, if you are watching this, now, okay, so interesting things happening right here because I took a break, and that's something I shouldn't do actually, because my new concept, you know what, I'll say this in a minute. If you are here from the Ant Oliver Extra YouTube channel, watching it on the Ant Oliver Extra channel, I would just like to say that the rest of the 8 episodes are on the main channel, but the new podcast will be, shown here on the Extra channel. If you're listening to Spotify or wherever you're hearing that isn't on YouTube, this will be the all normal way. But you know what happened before? I made a mistake, and that's because normally when I record my YouTube videos, I take a break and reset like I just do here. Like I take a big breather, reset, and that's something I'm not gonna do in this podcast, because when I started I said the time has now been set, or whatever I said. I don't need, maybe I should get a phrase written down so I know what to say. But my ideal goal with this podcast is, the old podcast took a lot of time to edit. When I started the podcast, I would write a little script with questions for the guest and different things to make it more time consuming. Then when the podcast started, I would of course have to chat, and sometimes they would go a bit longer. And then once I was done, I would go in and edit and manually turn on and off every single person's voice, meaning when I was quiet, when I was just breathing in the microphone, I would just turn my voice off. And that took a lot of time because I had to hear the entire podcast through and edit every single thing. So 1 hour long podcast would take at least 3 hours to, edit. And that's of course not a lot, but my main goal of my YouTube channel is of course the main Ant Oliver channel. So therefore it ended up taking too much time. Now my new goal with the new podcast is, I'm really breathing heavily, I'm sorry guys. But my new goal with this new podcast is, it's the same podcast, but with the new style, is no edits at all, because I love doing this podcast. I loved doing them before, and I'm so sad that I didn't have the time to put them out. So my goal with this is to make them a lot more simple without the whole fancy making a script. I may just put some notes that I need to remember, and then I will not edit anything out. So if we make a mistake or anything, we'll just go with the ball and roll, because, let's be honest, I feel like looking back at the old podcast, it was very robotic. I was very, welcome, I'm happy to hear, and very, I thought too much of what I wanted to answer, and now I want it to be all relaxed, because, let's be honest, most of the time when you're hearing a podcast, you're either, you're probably at work, or maybe you're sitting working. You may also be driving a car, you may be feeding your ants. I know I often hear podcasts when I'm driving my car, because that's when I'm interested in hearing something, although I have gone a little bit over to the music, but I think it'll turn back again with the podcast. Now, what will happen now? Well, I set the timer for 45 minutes, and that's because every time I want the podcast to start, I want to say, hello, time has started. And from there on, I wanted to go 45 minutes into whatever, and once the timer rings and the 45 minutes has passed, we will end the topic and end the podcast. That way, all of the podcast will be around these 45 to 60 minutes max. So that way, it'll be easier for me to say how long will I record today, because people like Wakushi, I love you Wakushi, you're a bit chatty, we need to keep a line on you, because else you will just go with the flow and never stop. And if we have the rule called the timer it will have to stop. So that's why we have the timer. Not because I don't love chatting, but because if I want to do this every week, like my goal is, I shouldn't have said that because I was actually supposed to not say that. Because that way, if it happened, I would be like, oh yeah, we're doing it every week. But yeah, that's the goal. A podcast every week, 45 to 50 minutes long or something. And of course, this one may be a little bit shorter as I'm just sitting and talking with myself, or I'm talking with you, but in reality, I'm just sitting in my ant room, listening to my mesabarbers falling down as they are trying to escape. But if you are here and you were interested in being a co-host, I want to say hello to you. I don't know who you are. You may be anyone. I am not looking for anybody specific at all. I'm not looking for a YouTuber. I'm not looking for an Instagrammer. I'm looking for someone who is passionate about talking about ants. Some of the things I would really like to do is something Aesthetic mentioned almost a year ago now. He said that he would love the Urban Ant Keeper to make like ant news, or somebody to do an ant news. Now, I'm not going to do an ant news directly here on this podcast, but I do want to maybe, I don't know when, maybe we'll set a 30-minute timer and then a 15, that's too much, 15 minutes, but I want to put a segment in every week to mention what my favorite video have been coming out from other creators and discuss something like Ants Canada's video. Is there anything worth it? Do I want people to see it? Because I want people to see everything, and of course people don't have time to see everything. I personally see a lot of different videos, and therefore I think I'm qualified to make a little segment where I maybe show my favorite video of the week. It may be Aesthetic, it may be someone like Bruma Ants, I don't know the age, but a newly started YouTuber, quite new at least. Someone like a Bruma Ants, maybe talk about basic ants, about how his video is coming out and how everything is going on. And yeah, I just want, actually, now I'm thinking about it again, I have no idea who I want to join this podcast. I'm seeking no one. I'm seeking everyone who likes to chat a little bit. Is welcome on the podcast. I'm seeking a permanent co-host. Now, a permanent meaning someone who will be willing to sit away around 1 hour of their week to this podcast every single week. For me, it's not a lot because I edit so much every day and it will just push my editing schedule a little bit. But with having this little time slot, it should be all right. So if you are able to put 1 hour every single week of your life to doing this podcast, you are the man I'm seeking. Now, I practice myself how I want to explain this in the podcast because I didn't want to put pressure on whoever want to join. But the only thing I really want to say is I'm seeking someone who is consistent. I'm seeking someone who can be there for every episode and be my co-host. The Ant Pod was never supposed to be about Ant Oliver, and I don't feel it is. Of course, this episode is a little bit about Ant Oliver, but I don't feel the Ant Pod itself needs to be about Ant Oliver. I'm just one of the hosts, and I would love to have a secondary host by my side to chat. And I love hearing. I watch a lot of Formula One, and I hear a lot of I heard a lot of Formula One podcasts. Now I don't. I hear around 2, but I love the way they chat together about the race and how it just sounds so natural. And that's something I really want because they just talk with each other like they are very good buddies. Someone like Ryan would be ideal, but I know Ryan is quite busy. Let's skip aside because again, I'm seeking everyone. If you like ants and you are willing to chat and willing to put an hour of your week into this, I'm seeking you. And if you do want to join this podcast, please send me a voice message on Instagram to the Ant Pod. It's called the Ant Pod, and if you just send a little, you have 60 seconds, but you can send more or less depending on what you want. Just say how old you are, your name, and just a little bit why you want to join the podcast, because that way I can get a sense of who you are when you are on the microphone. But let's be honest, the microphone part is the most important. So just chat like naturally, chat how you wanted to chat to a good friend, because that is what I'm hoping we will be. Now, of course, I'm going to say no to a few people because, well, hopefully we'll have a few people who are wanting to join. I'm hoping at least. Now I may sit there and think, oh, nobody wanted to be my co-host. That's how it is. But we may even get 3 co-hosts, because what I can feel from the other podcast I've heard is that if we have 3 co-hosts who's always there, 3 co-hosts and 3 hostess who are always talking together. Now we will also get guests on board like we have done in the past, and take topic-specific species like I've just gotten Tetramorium bicarinatum, and I feel like there's one guy. Some Mr. Matter, I can't remember his name. What is it called? Anti something and Matter. I don't know. He has a Tetramorium bicarinatum colony, and he would maybe be ideal to get on the AntPod to talk about Tetramorium bicarinatum. If you have any species you would like to hear about, also let me know in the comments, because, well, of course, I don't know. I actually don't know how comments work if you are doing it on Spotify. I guess you'll have to send an Instagram message to the AntPod. That's probably the way forward. But yeah, that is a little bit of introduction to what my new future plan is. Will this work? Will this be regular? Only time will tell. I think I will pre-record 4 episodes every week with my hopefully future co-host, and then we will put the first 4 episodes out within next month, so they will drop as they're supposed to, and we will have a little bit of time to chat and see how it works. So it's not like, yeah, of course you won't feel this, except I'm guessing once this episode hits, there'll be a few weeks breaks as we are pre-recording and getting ready for the next few episodes. Now, if you don't have a good microphone, don't you worry. That is not something we directly go into. I'm not seeking a good microphone. I'm seeking a microphone that works, and hopefully no children screaming in the background. Even if we do have children screaming in the background, that's nature. We can't do so much about it. But I want to ask you, how are you feeling today? I am feeling quite great. I just came home, and all of my ants are currently doing 50-50. I don't know if I should just talk a little bit about my ants. Should we? Should we do that? I feel like we shouldn't, because that's what we did in the first episode, although that episode is really old. I think we should go through the list, because I actually have quite a few species. Now, of course, to my right of me as I'm sitting here, we have the big Mesobarbarus colony, and this Mesobarbarus colony is quite a colony with causing a lot of problems, man. They escaped, and we could actually do an episode about the escape, without pointing too many fingers, because I'm not a guy who want to spread bad vibes. Generally, I don't. But when my car brakes fails, that's another story. But the Mesobarbarus colony is doing extremely well. They have lots of pupae and larvae, and I will need to look at a new nesting solution. Now, I've seen this massive nest on Instagram. Can't remember their name, but they have a 1 meter big acrylic nest, and I'm really wanting to get something like that, one big massive nest, and then I don't know how you can fit once the colony grows, but I feel like I really want to get a massive nest instead of these 5 nests, because I end up not looking at them because I want to make sure I don't stress the queen, and to be honest, I look way too little on the ants. Now, the outworld is also really filled. I was supposed to get a new outworld before the old outworld broke, but yeah, time was out of our hands, and we lost track of time, and the outworld failed, and now it's in a temporary box. But all in all, I don't really know what to say about the Mesobarbarus. They are growing, and they are very big. I think they may already have hit back after the big escape, where we sadly lost quite a few ants. Now I'm gonna turn my head and look at the next colony. That is the new Tetramorium bicarinatum. They are yet to be introduced on the main channel, and I don't know when they will be, but they live in a large Saturn nest from Wakushi. Now, they currently are doing quite alright. I got them, I've kept them for 4 days, I think, and the first day I got quite a big surprise as half the colony were dead. I don't know why. My first thought was they stressed to death doing shipping, but to be honest, now I'm thinking a little bit more that it may just be I don't know. I got them from Ant Antics, by the way, and I don't know how they have the colony. I don't know if they have ordered the colony or if they work with their own colony. I'm not going to say anything because I don't know it. But if it is a colony that's been taken from another colony, it may just be old age workers dying. Now, sadly, we also lost a queen, but I have observed one queen with wings and one queen without wings still alive. So 2 queens, one wingless queen is alive. I hope they recover, because right now it was half the colony who died. So sadly, a big loss. But they are living in the large Saturn, and I will do a video once I'm sure that they will survive and start growing. Now, turning the head. The next is the Camponotus ligniperta experiment, and a lot of you are interested in this experiment because it's fascinating, to be honest. It's going a lot better than I'm expecting. This thing is, it's Camponotus ligniperta, slow growing. They started the year off with a giant boom, and now they just have 40 larvae or something. And these larvae, they just don't grow. I mean, they of course do grow, but it's just insanely slow. I feed them one adult roach every week, and I take it out a few days later. But I feel like I pushed it the other days because they really were out in the outworld wanting to get food, and that way I knew that they were a little bit hungry. But generally, they don't do that. Both queens are still alive, and I think the experiment is going all right, except it's Camponotus ligniperta, very slow growing, so that's a bit annoying, of course. Now, turning around, the next colony is the Lasius fuliginosus. Now, as I'm recording this, Aesthetic Ants just put out his video yesterday of his Lasius fuliginosus. Now, my colony has now 1 worker who is born from the queen. So 1 worker has been raised successfully, and as far as I can hear online, that is the biggest concern and the biggest problem. And that has been successful, and we have 1 worker. Now, there's still a lot of Niger host workers, and I am going to look for some more host workers. I think that's almost an episode for itself, because I'm curious to how the system works, because people always say, get more, you need hundreds of brood and host workers, and I don't know why. It just doesn't quite make sense for me. Would the queen die if she doesn't see 50 plus workers? She only counts 49. Okay, I guess I'll chop the head and die. That's for another episode. I really want to talk to get some clever people like Ants Netherlands, maybe even also Ants Czech on to chat with those. Or if you are clever, maybe you want to be a co-host. Good thing you know what to do then. And put Instagram. But turning around, the colony, it looks all right. 1 worker, as far as I can see. The tubes is dry, and they have not moved out of it into the new nest. They are in a Venus nest from Makushi, if you didn't know. Now, the next colony on the list is the Tetramorium caspitum. I got this queen last year. I found her when I was wandering and looking for, I don't know what I was looking for, Lasius niger, I think, and I saw a Flavus nuptial flight, and I saw a Flavus colony eating the Tetramorium queen. I captured the queen. She got her first generation of workers, and she stopped completely. The workers slowly started dying, and yeah, it didn't look too good, but now she started again. So I think they have around 10 workers. They started with 10 workers in the beginning of the year. They were down to 3 workers, and now they're up to 10 again. They are living in the elevated platform from Pormore Arts with no water in the bottom but escape prevention, because that water dried up a lot quicker than I expected because it's a heated room. Now, turning around, we then have the Harpegnathus venators. These girls are the news of my week, because that has been the colony I've worked with a lot. To be honest, that's almost an episode for itself, again talking about venators, because they are insane ants, and people like Wakushi also keeps them, and he also observed how insane they can be. Now, my Venator colony had lost a queen upon them arriving from Aesthetic Ants, sadly. I don't know how many workers they had, 30 workers maybe, and they slowly were dying out. The infertile eggs were not hatching into larvae, and I got this new colony from Ant Antics. Now, I introduced all the workers, and everything looked very well. 5 workers were introduced, and I introduced the queen and the rest of the colony. Everything looked good until I came in the night and seeing the queen being murdered. I cried, I screamed, I didn't know what to do, but luckily the worker killing the queen took her out of the nest, or almost. She was in the nest entrance, and I disconnected the outworld, and I went in and grabbed the worker and the queen and just murdered the queen. Very brutal. Murdered the worker. What did I say? I don't know what I said. But I killed the worker because I had heard that the dominant worker may kill the new queen. So I put the queen inside again and followed her steps very closely. I put her in the outworld and she ran straight into the nest. And I thought, oh no, what have I now done? She looked around the other workers, and suddenly 5 workers were surrounding her, and she started attacking them again. And that's when I knew I had screwed up. In a heartbreaking moment, the queen came out again, and I took her and put her in a test tube. Again, a full video will come out if it hasn't already. I'm expecting this video to come out next Sunday, if this podcast come out on the 22nd, I guess. And if that's the case, that video will come out then. The colony is now in another setup with 6 workers being added. To be honest, I don't want to spoil everything. Let's just say, like, you can see the video because it should have come out. The video should have come out on the main channel this week, or coming out this Sunday. Turning around, we have the Camponotus herculinus. Now, these girls, they had cried a year last year with the whole dying and rebirthing themselves. They currently have around 20 workers, and just as with the Ligniperta, they had a great start to the year, booming insanely. And now they're stuck waiting for the larvae to develop. It's such a slow-growing species. Once the larvae is in the larvae growing stage, once the pupae comes, it's insanely fast, and you love the species, and then it just dies down completely again. So, to be honest, there's not much to say. They are just very slowly growing. Next on the list is the Myrmica colony, and I don't want to spoil too much, because again, if this video comes out, podcast comes out as planned, you won't know this, but the one queen Myrmica colony, the other 2 queens sadly died, is currently sitting in a Wakushi nest with 6 Myrmica queens in the outworld in a test tube, not able to get out and meet each other. That's all I want to say at the moment. What will happen? Hopefully these 6 queens will get used to the scent of the other workers, and the workers will get used to each other. And I have a little trick I will try to introduce the 6 new queens to hopefully make all 6 survive. Will it work? I don't know. What will I do if it doesn't? I don't know. Because after the Harpic Nathars incident, I'm a lot more scared for that operation. But I want to go through with it and show you what to do or not to do. Now, next on the list is the Acromyrmex oxpinosus, and they are a colony that's just in a annoying position. I don't have the setups for them. I really want to get a new setup, and I'm working with Wakushi, who is in development of the new pots, and everything is just not fitting together at the moment. They should get a new setup, and sadly I'm keeping them bad because I haven't provided them with a new setup like I should. They are not outgrowing the setup, but the fungi trash is together with the feeding area, and that's something I don't like. The colony itself is doing all right. They are just very slow growing, but that's Acromyrmex, I guess. At least that's my Acromyrmex colony. They have been very slow since the beginning. Now, beside them, we have the Formica fusca colony, and they are a colony I really want to do a video on, just because of how much they have grown. Last year around August, they went into hibernation. All the brood disappeared. The colony just slowly started dying of old age. Now, when this year started, I'm not lying. I think they laid around 100 eggs. All the eggs hatched into larvae. All the larvae hatched into workers, and they laid another 100 eggs. Now, I haven't followed them too much. I haven't looked at them really, so I don't know if they have another brood explosion on the way. But all I know is they have filled out their nest a lot faster than I expected, and I think I have to move them. And I think that will be my excuse to making a video on them, because I want to make a video on them, but it's a boring video because it's fuscas. They are not too exciting ants to follow, but yeah, that's just my thoughts. I want to make a video, but I also want the video to be interesting for you to watch, and especially a lot more for the casual viewer to watch, because a lot of people I'm trying to reach an audience outside the ant keeping loving community and just the ant keeping interested community. And that way I need to make the videos interesting for everyone. And I did my Camponotus nicobarensis moving not that long ago. That worked insanely well. And at the time of recording, my mini documentary of the life of an ant came out yesterday, and that video is doing insanely poorly. So that's how I'm trying to fiddle around with making the videos better for ant interested people. That's what I'm thinking at the moment, at least. So the Fusca, I want to do an update, but there's just not too much to update. All 4 queens are still alive, and 2 of the queens love hanging out in the outworld. Whenever I look at them, they get spooked and they go out in the test tubes. Liquid test tubes. We have the test tubes we have for water and sugar water. Next to them, we have a new queen. Yes, we do have. We have a new queen, a Pheidole Cynthia, also from Ant Antics. Love you, Ant Antics. So many new ants for you. She is a big monster, man. She is, as far as I'm aware, the largest or one of the largest Pheidole species in the world. And she has maybe 100 eggs. The eggs are all over the place, sadly, which is not often a good sign. She's not taking care of all the eggs, but there's also a lot of small larvae. So hopefully she will start her colony and she will start growing quite soon. I don't know if when I will do an update on her, I'll show her on the main channel. I haven't even showed her for real in a short video, just because I want to give her peace. And I have to record her, actually. I should record her before her first workers come, just to have that clip in the future. But again, I don't want to rush her too much. I looked at her the day I got her and 2 days after, and I feel like that's too much. So I want to give her a little bit of peace. But that's the Pheidole Cynthia queen. She's currently just alone in a test tube, but she will be relocated into a Venus nest once the first workers arrive and I can start playing with the ants a little bit. So yeah, she'll be moved into Venus once the first generation of workers arrives. Now next to her we have the Thalassius Flowers colony, and oh boy, they are weird. They have 2 queens remaining. I don't know what number you know. They have 2 today at least. And they have so much brood. It's insane. They have 200, 300, 400 larvae, and none of them are developing. None of them at all. Now, I watered the nest 2 weeks ago, and the nest looked very wet. And that's when Wakushi said, "Oh, dude, the nest is way too hydrated. Give it a piece." That may be why they don't want to go into pupae, because it's too humid. And I said to myself, all right, I won't hydrate the nest for a few weeks. Now, 1 week later, a small heat wave hit Denmark, and we had a lot of heat. And now the nest is just completely foggy up. Foggy? You can't see, and it's too misty. You can't see anything inside. It's so humid, and yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I've never seen that with the nest before. I haven't seen it with any of my nests. It's almost like I've put a heat mat right under the gypsum block and just put it on full power. Except I haven't. I haven't done anything. I've left them alone for 1 week, and then on the second week, without hydrating the nest, they just went misty and you can't see inside at all. Now, what I did observe yesterday when I fed them was quite a few workers actually went out to feed on the roach, and that's something I haven't seen for a long time. So hopefully they will start feeding on the roach. Maybe they've done it the whole time and I just haven't seen, but I hope they start feeding a lot and feed all the larvae, because they have so many larvae and they just don't feed them at all. So yeah, that's very annoying. Now turning around, next to them we have another queen. Now this queen, I don't know what to pronounce the name of. Polyrasic Promyxa? I actually forgot the name. Polyrasic Promyx? I can't remember the last name. I haven't looked at it so many times. She's a single queen, and man oh man, she's a weirdo. She's also one of the queens I just got from Ant Antics last week, and she is a single queen without any eggs or any brood at all. Now, I moved her into a Venus nest because I heard a lot of them are semi-claustral and want to go out and eat. Now, the day I put her in, she was in her new test tube with her old leaf. There's a leaf inside where she lives. And I came in, I decided to heat one side of the test tube, one side of the Venus, because I didn't quite know how hot she wanted. And I came in and she had relocated to the other test tube. I filled the left and the right one, and the right one has the leaf. But she moved into the left one which has a lot less water, and she lives in that one. Except the next time I looked, she lives in the other one, and it seems like almost every time I look at her, she switches place between the one and the other test tube, which is something I don't like, because that shows she isn't settling down, in my eyes at least. Now, I haven't looked at her for 2 days now, for real, because she goes cray when you look at her, just tapping and just moving the other nest around her. She runs out, and she's really, really easy to stress. And it's of course a bit annoying, and to be honest, right here now, I don't have the highest hopes. I never have high hopes with a queen without a single egg, because as far as my previous experiences, they have not ended well if the queen does not have any brood. So I just hope she can lay an egg. And I know Antix also have a queen they are observing at home. I think they have a few queens. I don't know if they are for sale or they are just waiting to sell them, to set them up for sale. But I've talked with, what's his called? Sam. I've talked with Sam a little bit, and we've chat how his colony is doing, because he has a queen. Sam is a co-worker of Antix, if you didn't know. But Sam has a queen that has laid one egg, and that's already better than mine. So we're just sharing information back and forward to see how they adapt to each other. Now, turning around, we then have the I skipped the Nova Messer Coccarelli, and they are doing quite well. I mean, they are my cursed colony. They've done so bad since I got them. They started with 8, went down to 0, went up to 10, went down to 5. Now they have around 13 workers. They are now in a Pour Amour Arts nest, and a lot of people said, they don't like test tubes. They like a more naturalistic nest, and they also need to be heated, and you need to feed them seed and all of this. I now feed them twice a week, so they always have food in the outworld. It's a Pour Amour Arts, the Jumbo Mini Nest, I think it's called, and it's like 2-in-1, so it's an outworld and a nest. And I'm heating one side of the nest, and the heated part, all the brood is located right on the heat source, so they really like the heat, and it must be 30 degrees inside, because it's like 26 degrees in the room, and that nest is heated even more, so it must be like 30 inside. The queen doesn't like it. She moves away. When the room is around 24, she stays with the heated side of the nest. When the room is 26, she stays opposite to the heated sides, but they don't remove the brood, and that shows me they like the temperature. It's not too hot. If they moved the brood away when the ant room got hot, I would heat the nest even less than I'm already doing. I'm only heating like a corner, so the heat cap goes over a corner and heats the one side of the nest. But I feel like the colony is doing all right. They've now had 2 workers dying in the new nest, but I think 5 workers have hatched. So they are, for the first time in a very long time, growing a little bit, which is always better than not growing, because they've had a long time where they haven't grown at all. Now, turning around, we then have my Camponotus nigoborensis colony, and I almost don't know what to say, because I've just done 2 videos in a row about them. And I feel like people know them quite well at the moment. They are living in the Foronto wooden nest, the big wood tower, where the first section is open, together with the Wakushi S4 no extra large nest and the S4 outworld. They empty an entire test tube with Wakushi sugar solution in right around 1.5 weeks. So that's an entire test tube they empty every 1 or 2 weeks or so. So they are really thirsty for sugar. And I feed them 3 adult dubia roaches a week. And for a while I was a little bit too much, because when I took the roach out, it was still a little bit wet and had gone a little bit moldy. Now, last time I took it out, it was completely dry. It was more dry than I've ever seen. It was like it was a roach that were a few weeks old maybe. It was so dry and just empty. So that's the first time they have fully devoured 3 adult dubia roaches, and plus a mealworm, superworm. So that's really nice, because then I know I'm feeding them. I'm not overfeeding them. I'm not feeding them way too many roaches, because when I fed them 3 roaches and they were still quite wet, I felt okay. I should only have fed them 2, and maybe I should only have fed them 1, but it's a good sign for me that they are completely emptying the roach. Now looking back, we then have the Lasius niger colony, and that's colony that really isn't doing well. Last you saw them, they were living in a aesthetic mesh nest, but it kept drying out, and I kept watering it, and I couldn't get my grip around the nest. It was too, I wasn't too satisfied with how I humidified it. I watered it, it was dry. I skipped the cotton, it dried faster. I put the cotton and watered. I should have watered it every day. But it's so atypical for me to water a nest every day when I have the Wakushi gypsum nest, which I overwater almost every week because I water them once a week, and they need to be watered half a chamber every week or so, else it's too much. So for me to flood the aesthetic nest was very unnatural for me, and therefore I often forgot to do it, and that's resulted in the colony relocating all of the brood in the outworld with the provided test tube. I give all my colonies a secondary test tube or a water source in the outworld if they are living in a nest, and they kept moving out there. So I was like, okay, fine. I can't get over how to hydrate. The ants don't seem happy. I put them in a Venus instead. Put them in a Venus, and they filled around 2.5 tubes. They live in all 3, and they filled the one with the queen up. And the queen was like, "Hey yo, peace off, I'm out, I don't want to lay any more eggs." And since that day, since I moved her, I don't think she's laid an egg. The colony have completely stalled. I don't know if it was a bit stressful for the queen, but she's completely stalled, and all the brood hatched into cocoons, and everything. All the brood slowly grew up and developed and disappeared. Now there's nothing. There's 3 tubes of workers and no brood at all. And nothing at all. I don't know. The queen just said, "Haha, I'm out." And she just stopped laying eggs. If you have any suggestions to what I shall do, leave it in the comments or hit me up on Instagram. You can, of course, also just send a message to my Facebook or just the Ant Hollifer channel if you don't want to use Instagram and send to the Ant Pod. So that is also an opportunity. Now, looking back, the next colony on the list is the Ader Mexicana, and yeah, whatever you have seen of them, it's too old now. You haven't seen anything new because every single day I feel like I can share something new. They are currently living in a new Wakushi pot that's completely filled, an old prototype Wakushi pot that's completely filled, another old prototype Wakushi pot that is 1/3 filled, an ant store outworld where I fed them a bunch of leaves, and like they always do, they just build a massive fungi inside. So once I remove the lid and make it dry in the outworld, I think they will fill out the 3rd pot with the fungi, because they have such a big fungi in the outworld. And even though I remove the ventilation, the fungi survives for almost a week. If I want them to relocate the fungi, I have to remove the lid and smash the fungus, just take my tweezers through the fungi, and then they understand that the fungi is not supposed to be there, because if I just remove the lid, the fungi stays there even though it's completely dry, and then it just dies. So what I did last time is I removed the lid for 4 days, and the fungi was just dry. It was dry. There was no ventilation. It was just it was like it was in nature, and it was like the fungi was just on my table. Nothing to hydrate it at all. It must have been my voice is dying. I can see I have 56% humidity right here where I'm sitting, so it must have been at the same 50% humidity, equaling to the fungi dying, and I didn't like that. I didn't want it to go to waste, so I took my tweezers and I just pushed it apart, and they took all of the fungi and pushed it home into the other pots, and that's when they started building in the 3rd pot. So I think I'll do that in a few days once the fungi is growing big, because I feel like that is their main priority, to grow the fungi in the outworld with the leaves. Now that setup, of course, also have a trash pot, which is also just growing by the day, and I need to do a big cleanup of that quite soon, and that's not going to be fun because there are some tiny ants inside of that. Now, My future plan is I'm working with Wakushi in a setup that's, I don't know when it will arrive, so therefore my next plan is to add a DIY tank. What I've just realized is since they build in the feeding area, they don't care about humidity. So I'm gonna get a completely dry plastic box, fill it with leaves that is completely eatable with no remaining. They will then build a fungi on all of those leaves, and once all of the leaves are gone, I won't open the lid. It will be a closed environment equaling to the same as in the Outworld where they grow the fungi without problems. And then I'll just remove we'll move the feeding area one tag extra, so it will be a little bit of a bigger setup. Now finally, we have the Camponotus singularis colony, and I have some good and bad news. I'm currently drying the setup out. I'm tired, there's so many slugs inside, and the setup has not developed as I hoped for, because to be honest, since the Mesa attack, I have neglected them just a little bit. I fed them, but the setup have outgrown itself. I cut it down a bit too aggressive maybe, and it's looking very disgusting. I'm sorry, Ryan, if you're hearing this, it's very ugly. And I've decided that I'm gonna dry the setup off because I don't see any activity. I've seen one worker once a week since the accidents, pretty much. Sometimes twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, but generally once a week. And I was sure that she was just alone. The entire colony was whipped out, and she was just the remaining part of the colony. Now, I have fed the colony both water and sugar water and protein since I've tried the setup, and every week. So they're not without food at all. And they have a test tube and a ant store dig fix nest to move into if everything goes bad, and they don't like it. I don't think they will do that. After back when I tried the Myrmica colony last year, they just did not move because apparently it was still very wet down with the clay balls. So yeah, I will just wait a while, I guess. I will wait a month, maybe 2 months before I start digging into it. But what I saw last week changed my whole mindset. I saw a major. That's the first time I can confirm with 100% certainty that there's at least 2 workers alive. Since the Mesa escape, I didn't know if it was the same worker I saw, but now I can with 100% certainty say at least 2 workers survived that attack. But I don't think my plan will change. I'll still keep the same plan and just slowly dry out the setup and observe what will happen, and take out, I'm sorry for the little thing, and take out the workers if I see them. And I'm gonna go as I go along. Now, looking at my rough recording that started a little bit late, I have 43 minutes, and in around 2 minutes time, we've hit the Decide 45 mark. Now, I just want to recap again. If you want to be here on the podcast, either as a guest or try to join as a co-host, hit me up on the AntPod. Right now, I'm open to pretty much everything. Like I said in the beginning, I want a little bit of a segment to recap the week of ant keeping. Is a big newspaper been released? Is someone gone rival? I want like a 5-minute segment. I think I'll put a 40-minute timer, and then we'll have a 5-minute segment to recap this week's ant keeping, to see what we think of the Ants Canada video. Like this week, he did a feeding live termites to his colonies, to his Polyracic colony. I don't know how to say the name. I can hear it. I say it wrong, but I don't know how to say it right. So I want a segment to recap the week of ant keeping. Just a little 5-minute segment, and maybe we'll push it around as we learn how everything works. But if you want to be a co-host, hit me up with a voice message on the AntPod. And that is just if you want to be a co-host. Or if you want to send any questions, hit me up on the AntPod on Instagram, or leave a comment in the description, in the comment section if you are on YouTube. But yeah, I feel like this first talk actually went a lot better than I expected. I rambled a little bit in the beginning, but I felt like as I started looking at the colonies, I thought, yes, we're doing this all over again. Now, do I have any future plans for the main channel? No, I'm just gonna keep producing videos. I feel like the Harpignathus video is gonna be quite interesting, and hopefully the Myrmica colony, if everything goes well, will also be an interesting video, but we'll see as we go along. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for listening to the entire AntPod. I hope you have survived without the AntPod. And again, I hope that in a few weeks, once everything is a little bit pre-recorded, I'm also going to Italy in 2 weeks time, and that's also why I don't want to have a week break already. I want to pre-record them and get them out on a schedule. So I hope that you can wait another month, and hopefully this time we'll get into the rhythm with this a little bit more simplistic setup of recording the podcast, getting them out, and just pumping out some ant content, because I love talking about ants, and I don't feel like talking about ants enough, even though I do a lot of videos on my extra channel, on TikTok, on Instagram, everywhere. And that right there is the timer of 45 minutes. So I would like to say, let's end the topic, but we don't have any topic rolling. So I would like to say thank you for listening to this AntPod episode 9. I hope you liked it. Episode 10 is not supposed to be anything special, but I guess it will be special because hopefully we have 1 or 2 new co-hosts joining. With that being said, that has been it for this podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please share it with anybody you feel who may want to see this or hear this. And with that being said, that has been it for this podcast. Don't forget to... I'm saying the same again. Oh my god, I do that. That was so weird because I had a different line. I just because I hit my YouTube and I just see you all in another podcast, I should say. Bye.